Hi, this is Bob Merberg from Hi-Ho. Today's AI-assisted conversation is based on a post I wrote, one of my most popular pieces, and it's the one closest to my heart. The post was called "A Nation That Catches Workers Before They Fall." It was about the Triangle Shirtwaist factory fire, which was an inflection point in the arc of American worker well-being. I'll link to the article in the show notes. Not gonna lie, in this episode, the AI took some liberties, expanding the scope of the original article. When this has happened before, I've either thrown away the episode or cut out the offending section. In this case, I agreed with 99% of what was being said, and it was generally accurate and added to the story and its application in modern life, so I left it in. See what you think. Oh, and in an upcoming super short episode, we'll explain how my company's name, Josito, was named after a hero of the Triangle Factory Fire. Off we go.
Okay, so we're diving into a deep dive on the Triangle Shirtwaist Factory fire.
Ah.
You've probably heard of it, but how much do you really know?
Yeah, it's one of those events that I think a lot of people know just the basic gist of.
Right?
But when you really get into the details, it's really horrifying and fascinating.
Absolutely. And it's something that I think we can learn a lot from, even though it happened over a century ago.
Absolutely.
So we're going to talk about what happened on that day in 1911, but we're also going to kind of see how it's still relevant to us today.
Yeah, and I think this is a great example of a story that really tragically illustrates why worker protections are so important, and something that we're still grappling with over a century later.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So let's set the scene a little bit. Okay. Picture yourself. You're working in a factory. It's cramped. It's on like the top floors of a building. You're making blouses.
Right.
It's fast-paced work. The conditions aren't exactly ideal. And then imagine this. It's March 25th, 1911. It's a Saturday.
Okay.
And a fire breaks out on the top 3 floors of this 10-story building called the Ash Building.
Right.
Hundreds of workers, most of them young immigrant women, are suddenly in a fight for their lives.
And most of them were between the ages of like 16 and 23.
So young.
Really, really young.
And there were exits, right? There were exits on each floor.
There were 2 exits on each floor on the top 3 floors where the fire was.
Okay.
But the Green Street exit, the one that they were forced to use for bag searches, was engulfed in flames.
Oh, gosh. So they were essentially trapped.
Yeah, tragically they were.
Oh, my gosh.
The other exit on the Washington Place side was locked.
What?
Which was a common practice
Really?
by the owners, Max Blank and Isaac Harris, to supposedly prevent theft.
Oh, my gosh.
And then on top of that, the fire escapes were very poorly designed.
Oh, no.
And they ultimately collapsed under the weight of all these people who were trying to escape.
Yeah, that's awful.
So the owners managed to escape.
Of course.
But 146 of their employees were not so lucky.
It's just unimaginable, the sheer terror those workers must have felt.
Yeah, it really is.
I mean...
And it just speaks to the negligence of the factory owners.
Yeah.
I mean, Blank and Harris had a history of ignoring safety regulations.
Really?
They had been cited for violations before.
Yeah.
And they just consistently put profit ahead of the well-being of their employees.
So this wasn't just a fire. This was a disaster waiting to happen.
Exactly. This was a disaster waiting to happen.
It's infuriating that something so preventable could lead to such a loss of life.
Yeah.
So what happened after the fire? I mean, there had to be some kind of response.
Oh, yeah. The public outrage was immediate and immense.
Yeah.
And this wasn't just a local news story. This shook the nation.
Like that.
I mean, the funeral procession itself spoke volumes. 120,000 workers marched in solidarity.
Wow.
With 300,000 New Yorkers lining the streets demanding justice and change.
It's a stark reminder of the power of collective grief, I think, and the potential for change in the face of tragedy.
Yeah, definitely.
So this tragedy led to the creation of the New York Factory Investigating Commission in 1912.
Right, a direct response to the Triangle Fire.
And this wasn't just like a symbolic gesture, was it? I mean, they actually had real power to make a difference.
Oh, they absolutely did. Yeah, this commission was not messing around.
Okay.
They had the authority to investigate not just the Triangle Fire,
Mm-hmm.
but factory conditions across New York State.
Wow.
They conducted over 2,000 inspections,
Wow.
interviewed countless workers, and they uncovered what they called systemic problems,
And by systemic problems, you mean?
meaning that these problems were deeply rooted in the way the industry operated.
Okay.
It wasn't just a few bad apples.
Gotcha.
They found widespread disregard for safety regulations, inadequate ventilation, fire hazards galore.
So basically just a blatant disregard for worker safety.
Basically, yeah.
And it wasn't just about physical safety, right? I remember reading something about the human factor being a major part of their investigation.
Right.
What exactly did they mean by that?
That's where things get really interesting.
Okay.
So the commission recognized that a worker's well-being isn't just about preventing physical harm.
Mm-hmm.
They actually use this term, human factor, to emphasize the importance of mental and emotional well-being,
Interesting.
which was practically unheard of in the context of workplaces back then.
So they were really ahead of their time in recognizing things like stress and exhaustion as legitimate concerns.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
They called for limits on working hours, recognizing that overworked, exhausted employees are more prone to making mistakes that could lead to accidents.
Right.
They argued that a worker's health wasn't just their own business, but a matter of public concern.
Hmm.
And they even went so far as to say, health is the principal asset of the working man and the working woman. Economic considerations demand from the state the careful supervision and protection of its workers.
Wow. So they were really connecting the dots between worker well-being and a healthy society as a whole.
Precisely.
Wow.
And their findings were a huge wake-up call. I mean, they prompted widespread reforms that continue to shape workplace safety and labor practices to this day.
Yeah.
But the question is, over a century later, have we truly learned from the Triangle Fire?
That's a question I think we need to explore further. It's easy to say that we've made progress since the Triangle Fire, but have we really?
That's a crucial question. The Commission's work was groundbreaking, but we still have a long way to go.
You mean it's still more about maximizing profits and efficiency than actually caring about the well-being of the people who make those profits possible?
You hit the nail on the head. It's often about cost savings and increased productivity, not worker health and well-being. It's a mindset that commodifies human life, forgetting that there are real people behind the data.
So how do we shift that mindset? How do we move toward workplaces that truly value human dignity and well-being?
It starts with a shift in how we talk about employee health. We need to move beyond the rhetoric of cost savings and focus on the actual human needs of our employees. That means looking at things like work-life balance, stress levels, burnout, mental health, all the factors that contribute to a healthy and fulfilling work life.
And it's not just about avoiding another tragedy like the Triangle Fire. It's about creating a work environment where people feel valued, supported, and engaged. Think about it, engaged and happy employees are more productive and creative. It's a symbiotic relationship.
You're right. We need to see employee well-being as an investment, not an expense. It's a win-win situation for both employees and employers.
So what does this all mean for us today? What are the practical things we can do, whether we're workers or employers, to make the workplace more humane and healthier?
That's a great question, and it's not a simple one, but here are a few key takeaways from the Triangle Fire and the subsequent reforms. First, safety is paramount. Investing in safety measures like fire escapes, fire alarms, and sprinkler systems is non-negotiable. No matter how busy we are, we can't afford to cut corners when it comes to safety.
That's absolutely crucial. And it's not just about avoiding physical harm. We need to remember that exhausted and overworked employees are more prone to accidents.
Exactly. And that leads to the second takeaway, respecting workers' rights. Workers have a right to a safe and healthy work environment, fair wages, reasonable working hours, and the freedom to organize and advocate for their needs.
It's about treating everyone with dignity and respect, not just as employees, but as human beings.
You're right, and that includes prioritizing mental health, which is our third takeaway. Stress and burnout are real problems, and employers need to implement strategies to support mental health, such as flexible work schedules, access to mental health resources, and a culture of open communication.
And we need to remember the stories of those who lost their lives in the Triangle Fire. Their sacrifice wasn't in vain.
You're right. We need to remember the names of the 146 people who died, the young women and men who were fighting for a better life, for a chance to build a future. They deserve to be remembered, and their story should serve as a constant reminder of the importance of worker rights and human dignity.
It's not just about the past, though. We need to look forward and ask ourselves, what are the issues that need addressing today? What are the modern-day challenges that workers face? You're absolutely right. We can't just focus on the past. What are some of those challenges, those modern-day equivalents of locked exits and fire escapes that workers face today?
That's a crucial question. Think about the rise of the gig economy, for example. While it offers flexibility for some, it often lacks basic worker protections like minimum wage overtime pay and access to healthcare benefits. That's a modern-day challenge that the Triangle Fire's legacy should make us think critically about.
It's almost like we've taken a step back in some ways. Instead of factories, we have digital platforms where workers might not even be recognized as employees.
Exactly. And let's not forget about the impact of automation. It's changing the job market, rapidly displacing some workers while creating new opportunities for others. The challenge is ensuring that workers have the skills and support to adapt to these changes.
It's like we need a 21st century version of the New York Factory Investigating Commission to address these new workplace realities.
I think you're onto something. We need to be asking ourselves, are our current systems and regulations equipped to handle the complexities of the modern workplace?
It's not just about regulations, though, is it? It's about shifting our mindset about work and recognizing the human beings behind the job titles.
You're right. It's about creating a culture of respect where workers feel valued, heard, and empowered. It's about prioritizing things like work-life balance, mental health, and opportunities for growth and development.
So where do we go from here? What can our listeners do to contribute to a more just and equitable world of work?
That's the question, isn't it? We all have a role to play. Stay informed about the issues facing workers today. Support organizations fighting for worker rights, and use your voice to advocate for change.
Even small actions can make a difference. Talk to your friends and family about these issues. Support businesses that prioritize employee well-being and be mindful of the conditions under which the products and services you consume are made.
Absolutely. The story of the Triangle Fire is a reminder that change happens collectively. It starts with recognizing injustice and then taking action no matter how small.
We've covered a lot of ground in this deep dive. Any final thoughts you'd like to leave our listeners with?
Just this. The fight for worker rights is an ongoing one. It's a relay race, and we're all part of it. The Triangle Shirtwaist factory fire should serve as a constant reminder that the pursuit of profit should never come at the cost of human life. It's a reminder that every worker deserves dignity, respect, and a safe and healthy place to work.
Thank you for joining us on this deep dive into the Triangle Shirtwaist factory fire. Remember, this isn't just a history lesson, it's a call to action. Let's honor the memory of those we lost by continuing the fight for a more just and equitable workplace for everyone.